Hey everybody, this is Chris Jerome with the Radical Independent, and I'm here with Dr. Lindsey Cormack, an associate professor of political science at Stevens Institute of Technology, author of the book How to Raise a Citizen and Why It's Up to You to Do It, director of the DC Inbox, and co-host of the podcast Government That Doesn't Suck. Uh, Lindsey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
So, real quick, probably because we'll spend the least amount of time on it, but what exactly is the DC Inbox?
Yeah, so every member of Congress gets a budget to write emails to their constituents in their official capacity. So this isn't emails that are like, vote for me or give me money. This is
Hmm.
emails that are like, here's the bills I'm introducing, here's the votes that I'm taking, I'm going to like host this committee hearing. It's that sort of like official update stuff. And back in 2009, when I was a graduate student, I was like, there's got to be some sort of digital archive for this. But there wasn't. The Library of Congress was printing all those emails out and archiving them that way. And so starting in 2009, I built the digital archive of every official e-newsletter that every member of Congress sends, and it persists to this day.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a way to, information, communication, improving that. I was going to ask you if it was part of your PhD work because I saw what your dissertation was about and it seemed related.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It was something where I knew that this would be a tool that like historians, political scientists, journalists could use. But for my dissertation, I sort of asked a simpler question, which was if we scaled legislators only on the votes that they talked about, would they look different than scaling them against all the votes they took? And the answer is yes. They try to match their constituencies. So if they think their constituencies are more liberal, they reveal liberal votes, more
Hmm.
conservative, conservative votes, more moderate votes.
Nice. Well, I found you not long ago on another show. It's Corey Nathan's Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. Small plug, great show. But what really kind of caught my eye was the citizenship book that we'll get into. That's a huge topic for me, huge subject. Large part of my own studies, kind of over the years, is American citizenship and kind of connected with constitutional theory, but kind of that Republican type, particular American type of citizenship. So that's a big, love topic for me. And I kind of feel like we've dropped the ball in that area a lot in terms of citizenship. But before that, just curious on a more personal level, how and why did you get started in political science? And are there any particular areas of focus that you kind of concentrated on?
So when I was an undergrad, I went to the University of Kansas and I asked myself, what is it that I don't know that the people at this university are going to be able to teach me? And there's plenty of things that I didn't know, but I ended up majoring in political science and minoring in African and African American studies because
Hmm.
those were just like big, glaring, missing pieces of my K through 12 education. And I ended up really enjoying both of them. And political science is what I ended up doing my PhD in. And so it just sort of like stuck. I really like people. Politics is just people. And so it's a way for me to study something that I really like.
All right. So let's talk about podcast. Government that doesn't suck. I mean, interesting name, great name, obviously. Good to know that government doesn't have to suck, right? So you get into that a little bit with your co-host, basically looking at what was a problem the government was trying to solve, what machinery was put into place to help deal with that problem, and did it work? Is that close to what you guys do?
Yeah, that's in a nutshell. And we actually, we have episodes every other week. And we just recorded one that I really liked that was with someone who studied the Apollo missions. And,
Mm,
like there were parts that were good. There's parts that didn't work out. There's parts that we like now have and we will forever have because of those efforts. And so
right.
it's just sort of this perspective that we focus a lot of times on when government gets something wrong. But in the course of the American experiment, there are plenty of times in which we get things right in ways that our lives are made appreciably better because of those efforts. And so it's like thinking about what those look like, not just to say like, hooray, cheerlead America, but to say like, guess what? We've got things right before in the past. We can do it again, but we have to study those things.
It's like sort of little case studies. It's an interesting concept where I feel like there's a lot of good examples to look at. It's useful to analyze those successes, right? Because we want to be able to replicate them if possible. I'm gonna have to tune in. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to take a listen to it yet, but I like the idea of exploring some of those nuts and bolts, kind of the structures and the processes, right? Because I don't know. I feel like a lot of people today they do take that negative, pessimistic, government's terrible, doesn't do anything good, and it's kind of the wrong perspective.
Well, I think it's just a disempowering perspective. Like I think about if I was on a team that was like losing a bunch of games in a row, or if I was on a business that like wasn't making any money, I wouldn't just continually tell my team or my business mates like, "Hey guys, we suck. This is all stupid. The system's rigged. It's never going to get better." I'd say like, "Look, we might be faltering right now, but surely there's been a time in our history where we were winning games or we were making money. Let's go figure out what it took to be on the winning side of stuff and go do more of that."
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people might accuse me sometimes of kind of being a little bit more on the negative side, or because I'm trying to kind of open people's eyes to some of the problems, deep structural problems and stuff like that. But I totally agree. And I try to balance that out. I try to be more positive, optimistic. Hey, we can change things. Hey, it's not too late. Hey, there's a lot of things we can try to do. So it's definitely kind of striking that balance. But speaking about today, I mean, one might argue that we have a deeply broken system, like the radical independent, and makes government pretty ineffective in some ways. The partisanship, the toxic dysfunction, the emotional tribalisms. Maybe not even ineffective, but even destructive. I guess that's not your purview. You're not going to get into that, right? I mean,
For a government that doesn't suck, it's not really a partisan story where I think some of it sounds like what you're saying is like rooted in extraordinary partisanship or something that's incentivized by a system like ours.
yeah,
And so that's not really what we're doing there. But I think in sort of the other work that I do, I think about partisanship or people who find themselves like within the major parties or outside of them. We just need to reconsider how we think about each other. And I don't want us to be enemies. I want us to be worthy opposition because I think
right.
when I talk to students and undergrads, they'll sometimes, they have really strong opinions on which parties they like or if they don't like either. And we sometimes say like, oh, my party's going to crush your party or we're going to win and you're going to lose. But I
Team
really try to
sport.
think about it as like steel sharpening steel, where I'm like, if you have worthy opposition, you're not going to get everything right all the time. So you got to be able to like hear them out, try out their ideas and see some of your blind spots. So I think recasting each other as worthy opposition versus enemy is something that we would all do better with if we could embrace that.
Right. I mean, democracy, you have to have that tension. There is a certain baseline level of conflict. I mean, that's normal, natural, actually good in a lot of ways. But how we do it is kind of what you're getting into, which is kind of a segue into the book. So, the book, How to Raise a Citizen and Why It's Up to You to Do It, which is oddly enough, I think it's like 50%. The hardcover is 50% off on Amazon right now. It's actually cheaper than the paperback. So,
I don't
everyone
know
go
how
out.
Jeff does it. Yeah, he sells it for cheaper. He sells it for cheaper than I can get it from my publisher. So I don't know
Right.
how he does it, but that's the place to get it.
Well, yeah, take advantage of that. Go buy the hardcover. So when you talk about why it's up to you to do it, is that the parents? Who is the you?
Yeah, so it's targeted for people who are in some way in some custodial form of caring for younger generations. So sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's grandparents, sometimes it's aunts or uncles, or sometimes it's like educators or T-ball coaches or
Right.
Girl Scout troop leaders. It's people who are around children because the argument of the book is try as they might, schools throughout the United States cannot get all the work done in the way that we have set them up to let our kids truly understand the knowledge of what our government is, but also the know-how to be a part of it. And so we have to take that on for those of us who find ourselves in roles outside of schools.
Right. Like I mentioned earlier, citizenship for me is just a huge interest. And I feel like real citizenship is highly underrated and neglected. It's like mainly a legal term these days for most, right? It's like it doesn't really get into the principles and sort of the some of the values involved.
Well, and
So,
I have
so
this part in the book where people, they say, why are you picking that terminology? Because it feels divisive. It might be like, you're a citizen, you're legally here, or you're not, you don't have documented papers or something. And that's not how I mean it or try to use it at all.
right,
A citizen is really like the highest honor a free country can bestow on its people. Because prior to this, the notion of like who counted is
right,
like landed nobility or titles that are usually passed down through marriage or familial, like generation to generation. Citizens are different. Citizens is like the honor that it is to live in a country that is free, but we can all be a part of that citizenry. And so that's something that I think it's a much better place to be than just sort of this legal technical, do you have these rights, do you not?
right. So you talk about how civics belongs in the home as well as the classroom, or before it even gets to the classroom, right?
Well, and I think it kind of has to be in the sense that if we want our children to grow up in a place that feels and functions better, they have to have a sense of what it is that they can contribute to it. And that's not something that schools are totally equipped to do. They might be able to teach, like Here's some history about it. Here's the branches. Here's the division of power. But that sense of belonging is something that's sort of incumbent upon us to make sure that our children understand.
Yeah, and even the basics, it's not nearly enough. Economics is even worse. Don't get me started on that. But I feel like civics education is just so underrepresented in the country, and what little there is might be somewhat distorted. I mean, I get the impression I'm in education, so I get the impression that a lot of the attitude is voting is sort of the only thing you really have to is the main focus, and go out there and it's not a deeper understanding. Go out there, pick a team, and do your thing. And it just seems like a really superficial aspect that kind of gets promoted in my mind. But
And
what
I
is it?
think there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is when you look at time in the classroom, there's just like not a lot of time that's given to people who are teaching these topics to focus on it. Oftentimes it's like one class in middle school, one class in high school.
Yeah, pretty
So it's like
much.
really hard to teach nuance if it's like you only get these people for 2 semesters. And so it's really difficult. I think it's also really hard to be a classroom teacher if you're looking over your shoulder and afraid that parents are going to be mad that you said the wrong thing or framed it the wrong way
Yeah,
or introduced a value that maybe isn't shared in their home. And so it's like a fraught environment to do the sort of work in.
right. It is. You talk uh, in the book. You talk about communication and how important that is. Talking about the principles but the dialogue, right? You got the civic engagement and everything, but how we communicate civically, and operating in sort of this pluralistic democratic society, free marketplace of ideas, but the communication aspect is an area where we've kind of broken down a lot. And but you address that in the book, right?
Yeah, and I think that's right. And part of it is because some of us are raised in traditions that say, like, don't talk about politics, like it's an uncomfortable subject or it's a taboo subject, or you might make someone feel bad. And if that's sort of the approach that we give our children, then they don't have the opportunity to develop the muscle memory to have conversations that matter. And so it's not something that I think we should say, like, oh, just wait till you're older, or like, we're not doing that here. We have to give them opportunities to practice. We have to show them how to do this behavior so it's a model for what they can do, either like us or different than us. But if we just say like, no, 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 that's not something we do, it's not surprising we have intractable political problems if we like don't even know how to talk about them.
And a lot of times the attitude is sort of citizenship is like an external thing. It's just something that is kind of out there in the world. It's not something that you actually personally engage in. Do you get that sense at all that it's citizenship is kind of an individual thing that you sort of practice, not something that is just kind of an umbrella concept that's forced upon you?
Yeah, that doesn't come to me a ton in that way, but I think there's this notion that like the word civic is uncool, citizen is uncool. It's all like lame, nerdy stuff,
Right.
which like I'm not going to fight someone to say like it's not nerdy, but I would fight someone to say like it's certainly valuable. Like what is a country if not for its citizens, especially one that's set up like a Republican democracy, is it requires citizens to like turn it on at all. And so
Right.
I think it's actually an incredibly powerful concept to think about and not one that you should just push off for like your nerdy friends who care.
Yeah, I guess maybe what I was trying to say is citizenship is almost like a spectator sport instead of people taking personal responsibility for developing that sort of aspect within themselves.
That's something I hear a lot more. Yeah, I hear that version of like that approach or that understanding a lot more.
Talk a little bit more about the communication. That's something that we talk about on the Radical Independent, and how communicating with others, kind of having that properly functioning, social cultural landscape where it's not a team sport game. Winning's kind of it's not about winning. It's about understanding, learning from each other, stuff like that. That's an aspect you get into when it comes to the communication piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's something that I talk to my undergrads about, which is this idea in politics that sometimes everything is going to be a debate, or there's going to be like a winner or a loser,
Yeah.
or you're going to prevail with your idea and everyone else is going to think that was a stupid alternative. But that's not really how most things happen. And the way that you can see that is like go to any city council meeting, go to something where we're grappling with something that's like small minutia. It's more of like, let me understand what it is you are hearing about a subject, what your perspective is on that subject, because that's your experience or that's what you're hearing. And then maybe I'll share mine. And then we can sort of say like, okay, given that that's what you've heard, I understand why it is that you might feel this way or that way. And so it's not necessarily about winning or losing. It's more about this like perspective sharing and understanding, because in that, the power of collaboration is unlocked. You can't collaborate with someone where you don't even give any credence to their idea or their lived experience. You can discount them, you can villainize them, but you're certainly not collaborating. And so it's
Yeah.
more about like setting the groundwork for what functional collaboration looks like by hearing each other out, which is not, I agree with you, or I'm accepting your position as mine, but it's just like, okay, let me like put a few more pieces together
Right.
so that I can understand this in a more holistic way.
Right. That it just seems like such a huge aspect right now that we're struggling with.
Yeah, and there's also this taboo, like if you say the wrong word, if you use the wrong phrase, then the entire like sort of topic that you might be thinking about or talking about is now invalid because you have like stepped on this landmine that you didn't know was laid in the first place. I think that sort of like speech policing is really harmful to sort of like a freer understanding of what we're trying to do here. So like with my students, we always start a semester being like, look, you might say something that hurts someone's feelings. You might say something that's offensive that you didn't know was offensive. But like words are not going to be violence in this context. And so we have to be willing to like try stuff out, apologize if someone points thing out,
Hmm.
and then we move into the next pieces. But
Right.
I think it's really inhibiting if we say like, oh, I don't have all the right terminology, or I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing and then I'm going to get canceled. Like whatever, those sorts of things are really inhibiting in a way that make it hard to do the communication that we need to do.
And it seems like we just don't listen. We want to get our point out, but we're not really sincerely listening to whoever we're talking with, right? Or we build these caricatures where we just sort of make a lot of assumptions where instead of actually listening, because I get that a lot on the page. I try to be specific, sincere. These are words from my heart, but people will come in and just create this caricature. Uh, that's like, wow, that's not where I'm coming from at all. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm saying. Right. So just listening sincerely, I think, is a skill.
I think that's certainly a skill, but there's also a generosity that we could do better to extend to each other in our intentions. Like, I have very infrequently met someone whose like sole goal was to go out and like rage bait or inflame people or make their lives worse. They might say things that like don't feel right or the same or copacetic with my thoughts on it, but I don't think they're out there to like do harm. And
Right.
sometimes
Right.
in sort of like flatter online spaces, that's where you get to really fast. It's like, no, 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 I believe you're out there to trigger me. And it's like, probably not.
Yeah.
Usually not. On occasion, yes, but mostly
Right.
not.
Maybe virtue signaling or just ego stroking, but not purely malicious intentions.
I don't know
Um,
anyone who lives a healthy life moving through it with just malice as their motivator. I've never known that to be true, and so it is hard for me to believe that there's just like a bunch of people who are going through the world out to do ill. I'm sure there's some, but I don't think
right.
it's most of us.
Well, I mean, I could just look at my own history, and I've learned from it, right? I used to be one of those people, kind of edge lordy on the internet. Ha ha! I'm so smart. Look at me. I'm putting you in your place. I used to kind of fight those battles 15, 20 years ago, but I grew out of it. It's a dead end road to nowhere, man. We're not getting anywhere with that type of communication. I kind of saw the light, so that's maybe perhaps why I'm so. I talk about this issue a lot because I kind of was an example at one point.
Well, and that sounds excellent. If you can like step over that, and if you can say like, look, this was a piece of like what motivated my sort of life in the past, I get that. I also think, especially for young boys and men, there is not a lot of outlets that would have that sort of thing right now as there has been in the past. And what I mean by like that is in every era of American history through today, we have had boys who sort of get conscripted against their will to go fight real demons, to go fight real enemies. And we don't really have that as much as we have had in the past. And so there is sort of this like energy of like, I got to do something. I got to like prove that I'm right or I'm stronger or I'm better, I'm smarter. And we don't always have places to put that. And so I understand why the online space sometimes takes the brunt of that, because there is some sort of like energy that exists that just doesn't have anywhere to go.
That's an interesting point. You're right. We got to find ways to channel that those energies into maybe more productive purposes.
Yeah, we've just had a history that has sort of put it into like a physical space of war making. And I'm not saying like we need more of that, but we do have to recognize that
Right.
there is an energy of young men and boys that just exists without that sort of need or that sort of like government impetus to say like, here's what you're going to go do. So instead, they exist in worlds that are sometimes online and not always that nice.
Right. Right. Well, important ideas for sure. It was great talking to you. I'm going to put the podcast and the book in the description, but Lindsay, I want to thank you for talking today. and we'll just continue to inform and hopefully improve the civic landscape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this work. The more people that I think are thinking about this from different perspectives, the better.